Fishermen have pulled up skulls, Viking swords, extinct giant deer, prehistoric artwork, and mutated-looking fish. These are unexplained objects pulled up by fishermen. In 2013, a fishing trawler off the Dutch coast snagged something really old in its net. Not a weird creature or a random piece of junk, but a fragment of a human skull from way back at the end of the last ice age. Scientists studied it and figured out it's about 13,000 years old, making it the oldest known modern human remains found in that part of the North Sea. Back then, the place where today there's water was dry land. People lived there, hunted animals like deer and bison, and left behind bones and tools. Over thousands of years, rising sea levels covered the land, so now the seabed holds bits of that ancient world under hundreds of feet of water. They don't know much about the person, but the skull piece belonged to an adult. And scientists also think they might have dealt with anemia at some point in their life. They can tell from tiny marks and the chemistry in the bone. They also determined that the meat from hunts was a major part of this person's diet, which is unsurprising. In November 2023, a guy named Trevor Penny was out magnet fishing in Oxfordshire, England. Magnet fishing being that hobby where you drop a string magnet on a rope into the water and reel up whatever metal sticks to it. Most days, it's boring stuff like bolts and old bike parts, but this day was anything but boring. It started out pretty standard. Trevor was having a slow day. He said he'd mostly pulled up scaffolding poles. Suddenly, the magnet snagged something long and heavy. When he hauled it up to the bank, he didn't immediately realize what he had. As he put it, "I was on the side of the bridge and shouted to a friend on the other side of the bridge, 'What is this?' He came running over. 'It looks like a sword.' Trevor reached out to the experts who confirmed the rusty blade was a Viking-era sword, roughly 1,100 years old, from the height of the Viking Age when Norse warriors were raiding, trading, and settling throughout the British Isles. In 2022, off the coast of Crete in the Mediterranean, divers found an ancient Roman port lying under the shallow waters near a small harbor town. And this wasn't just a few old rocks. There were rows of Roman pottery, tall clay jars used to carry olive oil and wine, sitting exactly where they'd fallen off a ship nearly 2,000 years before. Around the jars, the divers also found parts of old docks, walls, and buildings. It was the remnants of a harbor that had sunk beneath the sea. And it gets even cooler, because nearby were fragments from the Minoans, the Bronze Age civilization that ruled Crete thousands of years before the Romans. So, in one spot, you've got layers of history stacked on top of each other. A Roman shipwreck, a sunken port, echoes of a civilization long before even Rome. Last year on a fishing boat in northern Russia, a deep-sea trawler picked up this bulbous, alien-looking thing. The fisherman, Roman Fedortsov, was hauling nets up when a strange, chunky creature slumped onto the railing. It was gray, bloated, almost like a deflated balloon with eyes. But what was it? Scientists identified the creature as a smooth lumpsucker, a deep-sea species we normally never see because it lives so far down. When these fish are yanked up quickly from the high-pressure depths, their bodies can puff up and change shape, making them look completely otherworldly. The rapid pressure change can make their eyes bulge and give them this swollen, surreal look that most people have never seen up close. In 2010, off the coast of Taiwan, a fishing net pulled up a jawbone with teeth still attached. At first, the fishermen probably thought it was some big animal, maybe a whale or a water buffalo, but it was nothing anyone had seen before. It ended up in a museum where scientists started examining it. After some testing, including analyzing proteins that were preserved in the teeth, they realized the jawbone wasn't from a modern animal. It belonged to a Denisovan, one of the ancient human cousins of Neanderthals. These were mysterious humans who lived tens of thousands of years ago, and until this, almost all their fossils had been found in Siberia and the Tibetan Plateau. Suddenly, a piece of deep human history had turned up thousands of miles to the south, meaning Denisovans were more widespread than anyone realized at the time. One evening in January of 2020, a group of guys were fishing at a river in Gary, Indiana, when something completely unexpected turned up on their line. They were pulling up their gear near a bridge when one of them noticed something odd tangled in the water. When they got it up to the surface, they realized it was a grenade. Police later confirmed it, too. In a statement, they said the Porter County Bomb Squad was called in and, quote, took possession of the grenade without incident. To this day, Nobody knows how the grenade wound up in the river. One day on the Grand Banks off Newfoundland, a commercial fishing crew pulled up this bizarre-looking fish. They were hauling nets down deep, hundreds of meters beneath the surface, when a weird, almost alien-looking fish came up tangled in their catch. The first man who spotted it was Gary Goodyear, and when the strange creature first appeared on deck, he was like, "Good God, what the heck is that?" At first, nobody on the boat could name it. One guy even thought the fish's beak-like snout made it look like a platypus. Goodyear described its nose as almost like rubber, and no one knew what to make of the thing as it flopped on deck. It turned out the weird catch was a long-nosed chimera, a deep-sea fish related to sharks and rays that normally stays way below where fishermen usually fish. They have these strange bulging eyes and weird body shape because of how they evolved to live in the deep darkness. Because they had no idea what they were dealing with though, they almost hurt themselves. They were picking the thing up with their bare hands, unaware that these fish have venomous spines. Back in September 2018, two Irish fishermen were out at a big freshwater lake in Northern Ireland. At one point, they tugged on a fishing net and thought it was caught on a log, but as they hauled it up, they realized it was something much bigger. What they pulled out was the skull and massive antlers of what turned out to be a giant extinct deer, known as the Irish elk. These animals died out around 10,500 years ago, and their remains are incredibly rare to find intact like this. One of the fishermen, Charlie Coyle, later described his first reaction, saying, "I thought it was the devil himself. I was going to throw it back. I didn't even know what to do with it." The antlers on this ancient beast were more than 6 feet wide, and the animal itself would have stood about 6.5 feet tall. In the spring of 2024, a couple in Queens, New York went out to do some magnet fishing. James Kane and his partner Barbie Agostini were pulling their magnet out of a lake when it latched onto something heavy. It wasn't junk, it wasn't a bike, it was a metal safe. Now, being that it was sitting at the bottom of the lake, they weren't really expecting to find much inside, but they did. Inside that safe was hundreds of soggy $100 bills. The total was around $100,000. When they opened the safe and saw the cash, they screamed. Barbie didn't believe it at first, but once she saw the security ribbons on the notes, she was ecstatic. Next, they did something that I'd never do in a million years. They called the police to make sure everything was above board. The NYPD told them there was no evidence the money was tied to some crime and there was no way to identify the original owner, so the couple was cleared to keep it. Not a step I'd have bothered taking, but kudos to them, I guess. In 2005, a Dutch fishing boat dragged up something strange from the bottom of the North Sea. Caught in the net was a bison rib, but what made it stand out immediately were the carved zigzags running across the surface. This wasn't damage from the ocean or fishing gear. Someone had deliberately etched the pattern into the bone. When researchers got to studying it, they found that the bone dated back roughly 13,500 years, making it the oldest known piece of artwork ever found in the Netherlands. Back then, this part of the North Sea wasn't water at all. It was dry land. Now, what's really cool about this particular piece of ancient art is it actually tells us a little something about the person who carved into it. Archaeologist Luc Amkreutz described the carving by saying it was, quote, "very precise to start with, but a bit haphazard towards the end, as if the person doing the carving lost interest." With all that said, I will get out of here before you lose interest. I have been your host, James. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.